Hey guys, it's Nick with Parks Detailing and Parks Car Care. Thanks for tuning in for another video. Today we're going to be detailing this G80 M3. We actually wrapped this entire car in paint protection film and ceramic coated everything a year ago. It's the first time we've seen the car since then. The owner contacted me and wanted to have it cleaned up. So I'm going to walk you guys through some of the potential issues with this car, how I'm going to overcome those, and also just walk you through like some routine stuff as far as maintaining PPF down the road, what to do, what not to do. I'm going to start with the engine bay. So I always recommend, if you are going to do your engine bay detail, to do that first. You can do the wheels first or the engine bay first. I like to do a top-down approach. So Tyler's actually already cleaned a few of the wheels, but I'm going to go ahead and start with the engine bay. So show you guys some of the products we're going to be using today on this car. Specifically for the engine bay, I'm going to be using Green Star from Koch Chemie. This is their medium APC, so they have 3 different APCs: Polestar, Green Star, and Multi-Star. So that is an order from least to most strength. So Green Star is going to be probably the one you're going to use the most for exterior. Multi-Star is quite strong. I believe it's pH13. So really reserve that product for the dirtiest jobs, like fender liners that are just absolutely hammered, undercarriage cleanings, things like that. So this is 1 to 5, so 1 part Green Star to 5 parts water, and a Marolex Axel 2000 foamer. So I'm going to be using this as my chemical to clean the engine bay. Going to be using the Vikan big head brush and the Carscope wooden handle brush. So I've talked a little bit before about like the different Carscope brushes and what I like using for different duties. Really like the wooden handle brushes for the dirtier areas like engine bays. The soft touch brushes, which are the yellow, I think I've got one here in the wash bucket. The yellow plastic handled brushes, way softer. You can actually even see like how much softer this one is. The brushes, bristles are a lot softer, but as a result, they're much more likely to kind of mash down. So like that, which these are great for like between badges, the more delicate parts of the car, cracks, crevices. Like if I'm putting a brush directly on paint, I prefer using this. This car's full body PPF, so I could probably get by using this brush and not damaging the PPF. Actually, I know I could. I've done it before, but for like jet black trim, badges, or in this case like jet black wheels on this G80, this is the brush to use. But for the engine bay, I like using this one better because it doesn't, like you can see when I press down, they're not actually like spreading out. It's just a stiffer brush, stiffer bristle. It's also a longer bristle. So when I'm getting in the cracks and crevices and I'm pushing down, I'm finding that it doesn't kind of spread out, and you're kind of just like the bristles are just mashing outwards, and you're not actually really causing any friction in any cleaning. So also the stiffer bristles, obviously I'm not worried like in a metal engine bay. These plastics, the rubber hoses, not worried about causing scratches. So I actually want the stiffer brush. The Vikan large head brush, this is kind of self-explanatory. It's just all this surface area underneath here. The engine cover, you know, I could go around and use this for that entire process, but that is extremely tedious. It would take way too long. So I'm going to use a bigger brush with larger surface area for the big areas, and use the softer, smaller brush to get into some of the cracks and crevices that I would have trouble reaching with this brush. So first step I recommend, always make sure you're working on a cool engine bay. Don't do this like right after driving your car. Some of the cleaners and even the protectants can cause like staining and etching on the plastics when they're really hot. So I've experienced that before. You want to make sure it's totally cool, which this car we started up once today to pull it out here, and that was hours ago. So it's good to go. There is a lot of leaves. This car lives outside, so I've had to spend quite a bit of time getting the best I can into the cracks and stuff here to get all these leaves out by hand, and then also taking the pressure washer to blast them out. There's some way down here. I don't know if Vince is going to be able to get it on camera. They're like really buried in here, way down in there. So I do want to get those out because that's going to drive me crazy, and the customer is obviously paying us to detail the engine bay, so I want to make sure it's a thorough job, properly done job. So I don't know if I'm going to need to take this cover off to access that, or I might be able to take a vacuum and stick it down in there to vacuum those leaves out. But point is, you want to get any like loose debris, leaves, twigs, stuff like that, especially this time of year. During the fall, the engine bay can collect quite a lot of that, especially along the front cowl. So it's really important to do, not just from a detailing standpoint, but like over time, there are drains in there that can get clogged. And on older cars, I've seen where those drains get clogged with a lot of like broken up leaves and crushed up debris. And then you start to have water leaking into the car. So good thing to do, not just from an appearance standpoint, but also from a maintenance standpoint. Just like detailing wheels, I believe with engine bays, it's the same approach. Sometimes I will pre-wet the surface, like now I did, and the methodology is the same. By pre-wetting it, you're getting, you're flooding the surface with pressurized water, so you're gonna get a lot of the dirt and debris off before using your chemicals. The downside to that is the surface is now wet. So this green star that I diluted 1 to 5 is actually gonna be a little even more diluted because I'm putting it on a wet surface. Also, because the surface is wet, even though the Marolex does foam up the product a good bit, because it's wet, it can run off. So like for wheels, you can do it either way in engine bays. You can get it wet first, try and get as much of the brake dust, or in this case, crud and debris off first, or you can go straight to your chemical on a dry wheel or a dry engine bay. The plus side to that is, even though you're not pre-rinsing it, the chemical is less diluted, it's gonna cling longer, and therefore be able to do its job better. So today it's extremely overcast out here. It's actually drizzling a little bit. So this would be a day where I would, for wheels, probably not pre-rinse them, because I've noticed, especially with the reactive wheel cleaners, when I pre-rinse the wheel, even like the ones that have a more gel viscosity, like Purge, S-Tech wheel, they just run off the wheel faster. So I feel like I'm using more product, and the product is not able to react and like work the way that it's supposed to work. So in this case, this engine bay was not super dirty. Like if it was caked in grease and in dirt, I probably would have not pre-rinsed it first to try and let the green star really work as well as it can. So gonna start foaming down all the components of the engine bay. For me here at Parks Detailing, like my rule of thumb is really, use your common sense. I've seen a lot of debate on like the forums and Facebook and stuff over the years, Instagram, like people getting worried about doing this process right here that I'm doing to an engine bay. Modern production cars, like especially this one, this car's only a year old, they're made to get wet, like it's not gonna damage anything. If you are using a gas pressure washer at home, things like electrical connections, like this intake seal here, even though it has this clamp that's holding it on very tightly, just use your common sense. Like, if you have a gas pressure washer, don't get 2 inches off of something like that, or off of like a headlight connection, because you could damage it or blow it loose. But on most modern cars, you really have nothing to worry about. To the new person to this process, or to detailing in general, this might look like, oh my gosh, you're damaging the engine. It's totally fine. I'd say like in the 90s era cars and further back is where I get a little hesitant. Like most of the 90s BMWs, Porsche, stuff like that, the engine bay is certainly fine to do that with. It's more of an age issue. Like some of the connections, some of the wiring and stuff is starting to get a little bit old and brittle. So I don't really want to be footing the bill for damaging something in someone's engine bay. So I have the luxury here of having a steam cleaner, professional grade steam cleaner. So if I am hesitant and it starts to get into that era of car earlier, it's much more tedious to clean an engine bay that way. It takes way longer, but I tend to do that just to err on the safe side. So if you have a newer car, you can do this. It's as long as you practice common sense, it'll be fine. If this gets on the paint, it's totally fine. Green Star is actually a really good pre-soak for like the front of the car, front bumper for bugs, rocker panels for general dirt and stuff like that. So like I'm not worried, for example, about it getting there on the paint, or in this case, the PPF. It's not gonna damage anything at 5:1. If you are running like a wax or a sealant as your LSP on your paint, obviously an APC is gonna degrade that. So keep that in mind. But for this case, you can see I got overspray on the windshield, overspray on the fenders, front bumper. I'm not concerned about it. One thing I like to do too is I actually like to spray the cleaner directly into the brush. It's kind of hard to do that with the foam attachment, but I just find that it helps keep the product going. Gets it started so you're not putting a totally dry brush on it. So I know originally I was planning to use the Vikan brush on this, but this engine cover, unlike my S55 on my car, it actually has a lot of like weird crevices and kind of contours to it. So use this here, all these areas. It's a really good day here to be washing cars. I know a lot of you guys at home are also washing outside. I don't have that luxury here of indoor washing, so any of the products we sell or just detailing in general, try to do it when you're not in direct sunlight. Like if we were working in direct sunlight in this engine bay, quite honestly, I would probably just do it inside with the steam cleaner, because this Green Star would be drying up and water would be drying up in the engine bay, and it would just not be a good time. If this engine bay was like super filthy, I would be taking the pressure washer periodically and just rinsing it out, the brush that is, so that I'm not spreading dirt around. Just like that. Detailing your engine bay too is also a good thing to do. I do it on my F80 every chance I can get. Even though that car was made in 2018, you know, these cars leak oil notoriously bad, so it's a good way to like check your engine bay and make sure things aren't leaking. This engine bay actually has a lot of really hard to reach areas where I'd be using the Vikan brush more, but I'll probably just end up using it on the underside of the hood. It looks to be a little loose. Tighten it down. Another thing to note on like older cars, these hinges here, they do have grease on them to keep it from squeaking and for it to open and close smoothly. Green Star is not really strong at 1 to 5, but I imagine if you're using enough elbow grease or enough products or make enough passes on it, and if that grease has already started to kind of wear off, you might clean it all off. So just something to keep in mind on like older cars. You don't want your customer's car or your personal car squeaking after you're done cleaning it. All right, so now that I'm done with the Green Star, scrubbing it down, I'll just rinse it top to bottom. All right, so now that we're done with the cleaning portion, I'm actually gonna leave it wet. And what I'm gonna use is Motorplast from Koch Chemie to seal all the plastics and rubbers in here. But the way I like to use that is I'm actually gonna just close this hood, decon the car, wash it, and once it's pulled inside, I will blow dry it. I can walk you guys through it once we're inside, but I'll blow dry it off mostly. You don't have to get it 100% dry. And then I will apply Motorplast, and it's a self-leveling product, but I can go over that more once we're in there. So it is starting to rain on me here, so I'm sure Vince's camera is getting soaked, so we're gonna take a little break. I can run you guys through what products I'm gonna be deconning this car with inside and let this rain kind of calm down before we get to washing the car. So we're done with the engine bay. We're about to prep the car outside. It's raining pretty hard, so Tyler and I are gonna knock that part out as quickly as possible. We have plenty of videos at this point on how to hand wash properly. The process for PPF is really no different, a full body PPF car. Today I did select 3 very intentional products though for this car. We'll get some footage once it's pulled in of the water spots, but the car is water spotted pretty badly. So it lives outside. It's not getting, I would guess, optimal maintenance, and it does have some signs of like going through car washes and stuff. So a good takeaway for this video is that PPF is not totally bulletproof. All that being said, I would much rather the PPF on my car be water spotted than the paint on my car, because the severity of these water spots on this car, if it were exposed paint, you would probably be in a position of having to wet sand, which is not ideal on a daily driven car. I mean, you're taking away paint, a pretty considerable amount of paint by wet sanding the paint. So considerable amount of the clear coat. So even though it's, you know, it's not gonna probably turn out 100% perfect. I've done some test spots. I'll walk you guys through that, kind of how I do the test spots for polishing PPF. It's gonna be a 90+% improvement, and most importantly, it's the plastic on his car taking the damage, not the original paint. So the 3 products I chose today to prep this car is Koch Chemie Super Foam. This is their strongest snow foam, so kind of like their APCs, they have 3 different foams. They have Gentle Snow Foam, which is their pH neutral shampoo. You can use that in the wash bucket or in the cannon. It's pH neutral, so it's not going to affect your wax sealant. It's not going to affect the hydrophobics of your coating or anything like that. Can also be used in the foam cannon. I've been running like anywhere from 50 to 100 mils in the foam cannon. All 3 of the foams produce a very thick, almost like shaving cream-like consistency foam. So if that's what you're looking for, all their foams work great. Super Foam is their strongest foam. That's what I chose today because of the strength of it. It's a pH level of 12. So for this car, it's quite contaminated. I mean, the film is rough to the touch. It lives outside, as I mentioned. From what I can tell, it's under trees a lot, so there's just a lot of contamination in the film. It needs a really deep cleaning. So I'm not worried about removing a wax, removing a sealant, affecting the hydrophobics, the car. I just want to use the strongest possible pre-soak to get as much of that embedded filth off as possible. So the shampoo I'm using, this is Restart Wash from Gyeon Quartz. This is a shampoo that has cleaners in it that can remove embedded contamination like iron fallout. It has that smell to it like the reactive wheel cleaners, if anyone's familiar with that. So it's kind of like a two-in-one product. It is a strong shampoo, but it also has that iron removing capability in it. So believe it or not, PPF, you do want to decontaminate it like paint over time, meaning using a product like Restart Wash, NV Purify, S-Tech Iron, something like that to actually remove the embedded iron contaminants from the plastic. So rather than having to do snow foam, a shampoo, an iron wash, and then another wash, I can just snow foam and then go to Restart Wash. And from there, I'm going to be using Gyeon Water Spot. This is their acidic water spot remover. We carry two different water spot removers in the store right now. We have NV Shift and Gyeon Water Spot. Just speaking out of complete honesty, I feel that the Gyeon Water Spot is a little bit stronger of the two. If you're newer to decontaminating products like water spot removers, iron removers, Shift I think does play a good role. It's a little bit harder to mess up, like in terms of using it outside where conditions aren't ideal. It's just like iron removers. If it's hot outside, I don't recommend using a water spot remover and iron remover. That being said, Shift is a little bit on the weaker side, so I find that it's a little bit harder to damage your paint, like to etch your paint. But this car is super water spotted. I'm obviously, professional, so I know what I'm doing. I'm not worried about, I want the strongest possible product I can get. And it's also very overcast and drizzling outside. So I'm not worried about the sun baking this on the car. I'm not worried about it drying up on the car. Really the strongest solution for a chemical water spot remover is going to be pure acid. So we're actually working on getting that stocked from Koch Chemie right now. It should be on the way actually, so you'll see that in our store soon. So Tyler and I are going to get started. We're going to run through the decon. If you have any questions about like how to use snow foam, Carscope, there's plenty of videos on our channel on how to do that already. So we've cleaned the engine bay. We're about to decon the car, pull it inside. I'll do the final touches on the engine bay, and then we'll get to polishing the PPF.